supply. That market overhaul is still a work in progress, with plenty of critics raising questions about its effectiveness and cost. Also, still a work in progress, plans to winterize the Texas natural gas supply chain, which will also probably get some attention. Georgetown Republican State Senator Charles Schwertner chairs the Senate Business and Commerce Committee that will hold the hearings. Schwertner was also an author of one of the key grid overhaul bills signed into law last year. Mose Bushell, KET News.
Traffic is expected to pick up at the Austin Bergstrom International Airport starting tomorrow for the spring travel and festival season. Airport officials say South by Southwest, spring break, and new nonstop services launching this month will bring more travelers through early April. People are encouraged to arrive at least 2 hours early for domestic flights and 3 hours early for international flights. Face masks are still required to travel. There's more news at KUT.org. I'm Lauren Terrazas.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Rachel Martin.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. Good morning. How can the United States make sure that an oil ban hurts Russia more than it hurts the United States? President Biden yesterday targeted Russia's most important export.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
The announcement affected oil markets where prices were already rising, and they have exceeded $120 per barrel. Gas prices are also up well over $4 per gallon on average, and the people paying include Orlando Rojas from Los Angeles.
It's not doable, man. $100 every 2-3 days. It adds up. $400 a month. It's not fair. It's really not fair, and they're not giving us any option.
Our next guest is Denton Singh-Prograna, who is Chief Oil Analyst at the Oil Price Information Service, or OPIS, which provides independent information to the oil industry. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
How significant is it that the United States alone is making this move?
I think it's really more symbolic than anything. One of the things that's really happened over the past couple of weeks is the industry itself almost basically put a ban on Russian crude oil in that a bank would not issue a line of credit for a company that may want to buy one. Shipping companies, the ship owners wouldn't go into the Black Sea to load crude oil because of the insurance premiums that are involved, because it's considered a war zone. So, it was almost a de facto ban before the president's announcement yesterday, but the president's announcement yesterday morning just makes it official.
Is this enough of a change then to hurt Russia?
It probably is, because they're still going to send some crude oil to China through various pipelines where they're connected. India may buy some a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it does deal another blow to the Putin administration. And also, I know the continent of Europe will continue to bring some crude oil in, but they're gonna find it difficult as well when ships will not bring it to various ports throughout the world.
Mr. Singh-Prograna, can you help me with something? I've been through a lot of crises where oil prices went up, and when gas prices also soar, as they now are soaring, I personally have my doubts, because I presume the gas that I bought this week is oil that was drilled somewhere many, many months ago and sold at much cheaper prices months ago. So why should my gas price already be going up so much so soon?
Granted, oil transacts multiple times before it meets its final destination, and the same with gasoline. So as you get downstream throughout the terminal, the price becomes a lot more real time than it did when something was produced, the oil that came out of the ground, several weeks and perhaps even months ago. Maybe it was taken out of storage, for example. But the way gasoline works, it's a lot more real time, and inventories work on a just-in-time basis. So that's the way the gasoline industry has worked for quite some time.
So you don't think that oil companies are profiteering here?
I think obviously they're profiting because of the high price right now, but the guy you're buying your gasoline from on the corner at your local station, he's certainly not. He's selling gasoline at a very slim margin right now, and those margins are slim to begin with, but in some cases throughout the country, based on some of the data we're seeing, is they're selling gasoline at a loss.
Thank you for that. Let's ask about replacing this oil from Russia. U.S. officials have been reaching out to Saudi Arabia. They've been reaching out to Venezuelan officials in some way that's a little bit unclear, which is prompting a lot of pushback, especially from Republicans in Congress who are saying, why reach out to Venezuela? Does it make any sense to reach out to Venezuela for their oil? Now, based on the statements of Biden administration officials, it's not clear to me they really are reaching out for Venezuelan oil, but would it make any sense to do that?
I guess at this point, there's an all hands on deck approach, and I'm not going to get into the politics and the geopolitics of that particular piece, but what you need is sort of a replacement crude. Not all crude oils are the same essentially, so you have different qualities, and refineries in the U.S. have invested billions and billions of dollars over the last 20 so years to be able to bring in heavy, sour, just cruddy crude to be able to run at their refineries and turn it into usable products, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, etc., and to take advantage of the difference between light sweet crude and heavy sour crude. A lot of that crude that comes from Russia, and some of the kind of refinery feedstocks, if you will, to refer to them as, is also this heavy, sludgy stuff that refineries there cannot turn into anything usable, but U.S. refineries can. So it's more about replacing that. Canada would be a good start, actually, and even some very little bit of domestic production, and even Mexico. So there's other options out there. It's a challenge to replace this at the snap of a finger.
Well, let's just very briefly follow up on that. Can the United States make up the difference on its own? Because that's another political talking point right now.
Well, when you consider the fact that, if Russia was completely cut off from the world markets, that's about 3 to 4 million barrels a day. I think U.S. production could go up. I'm not quite sure it could go up that much. And it takes time. The drillers in West Texas, they need some time to bring oil to the market. I like to use the 7 and 7 and not the cocktail, but on land drilling production takes about 7 months from start to finish, and then deep water, Gulf of Mexico, think 7 years to bring that oil to market. So there's that time lapse, but you also have the fact that, like everything else in this country right now, there's labor shortages.
And things take time. Denton Cinquegrana, Chief Oil Analyst of the Oil Price Information Service, thanks very much for your insights.
Sure.
Some 3.7 million Americans trace their roots back to an Arab country. That's according to the nonprofit Arab American Institute. Still, when it comes to being properly reflected on government forms like the U.S. Census, many say their roots may as well be invisible, and some want change. From member station GBH in Boston, Soraya Wintersmith reports.
When 38-year-old Mohammed Missouri filled out his most recent census, he felt conflicted about what to mark for race.
Like, I was staring at the form, contemplating putting in other, but then the government form, it clearly specifies what falls within Caucasian, and so eventually I had to do it.
Missouri is originally from Iraq, and when he's not filling out documents, he identifies as Arab American. He acknowledges people can't readily gauge his ethnicity just by looking at him. Still, Missouri says the census categorizes him and people with similar backgrounds incorrectly by forcing them to be counted as white.
It's false for me. I'm not white. Period.
Missouri is not alone in his belief. A new study from a trio of researchers supports adding a new category to the U.S. Census for those who identify as Middle Eastern or North African, or MENA. Back when the Trump administration revealed it was rejecting researchers' recommendation to add that MENA category to the census, Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib grilled the Bureau Director Stephen Dillingham over the decision.
So, Director, are you aware that people like me who are Arab, Middle Eastern, North African have to indicate that they're white on the U.S. Census?
Tlaib's district includes the Dearborn Heights area. It falls within Wayne County, which the LA Times reports has the third largest MENA population in the U.S., behind LA County and the New York City area. Tlaib argued adding the MENA category would help to more accurately reflect people's lived experience in data.
Because the MENA community, like others, relies on accurate census representation for health research, Director, language assistant, civil rights laws, and reporting educational outcomes, and drawing congressional and state legislative boundaries.
Since then, the Biden administration has indicated it's reviewing the previously rejected MENA category.
Hi, Emily. Come on in. It's good to meet you in person.
For Emily Shamia, it's less urgent. Her family has roots in Lebanon and Syria. She says she looks white and gets the benefits of being white, so checking that box isn't the worst thing.
Race is something that was created so that white people who slaughtered Indians, who enslaved African Americans, Africans could justify their slaughter and their enslavement. And I haven't been the victim of any of that. So if you're going to have what was called protected classes when I was much younger, then I don't need that.
The difference of opinion between Shemia and Rep. Tlaib and Missouri likely springs from a generational divide experts say exists among the MENA community.
You know, I'm 52, and the people in my parents' generation, a lot of them have a different racial identification than people in my generation and those who are younger.
That's Professor Nadine Never. She teaches at the University of Illinois Chicago in Cook County, another place with one of the nation's largest MENA communities. She says if you're an Arab person who came of age around the time of 9/11, you likely experienced anti-Arab racism.
Everywhere you look, you know, society is saying Arabs are bad, Muslims are bad. So it's almost impossible, you know, to have formed a consciousness of Arabs as white for the younger folks.
Never wants to see the Biden administration add the MENA category to the census and other documents. Attorney Michael Van Cleve isn't waiting. He's suing the Biden administration, saying the census data is degraded without the new category.
That is kind of the core of this case, is whether or not the race data and the race categories are accurate for today's America.
Recent NPR reporting shows the Trump administration tried to tamper with the census count on the back end. That's in addition to the widely reported issues with an accelerated timeline and citizenship data. Van Cleve's case, which is about data integrity, is now on appeal in the 11th Circuit.
Would it probably be in the best interest of America for this issue to be resolved without litigation? Yes, I think so.
The Federal Office of Management and Budget, which sets the categories for race and ethnicity data, declined to comment for this story. If Van Cleve prevails, his case will move forward with a 3-judge panel. Mohammed Missouri is eager to see the designation, whether it comes through the courts or through executive action.
When the president talks about being inclusive and saying nice things about the Arab American community or something, that doesn't mean anything to me if the policies remain the same.
The next U.S. Census that might count North African and Middle Eastern people differently is 8 years away. For NPR News, I'm Soraya Wintersmith.
This is NPR News. And this is KUT 90.5, Austin's NPR station, and KUT.org, 7:19 on this Wednesday morning. I'm Jennifer Staten. Thanks so much for joining us for a morning edition. Coming up, a jury has found Guy Ruffett guilty on all counts for his participation in the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol. It's the first trial stemming from the attack that day. Hear more about the verdict coming up at 7:34.
Support comes from Sherwood Forest Fair. Over 150 daily shows, such as jousting and falconry, 10 live bands, and 170 artisans. Weekends March 5th to April 24th, including Spring Break, Friday, March 18th. Details at sherwoodforestfair.com.
Support comes from Driveway.com, enabling new or used car shoppers to purchase vehicles whenever, wherever, and however they choose at Driveway.com.
Another cold front on the way. Forecast details next.
Available now from KUT, KUTX Studios, and Identity Productions. It's Tacos of Texas.
You know, there's so many generations before us that have been barbecuing that were Mexicanos.
And I think when people work alongside each other, we borrow each other's strategies and cuisines.
Join taco journalist Mando Rayo as he explores the taco culture of Texas through the eyes of the people in the Lone Star State. That's Tacos of Texas. Available now on your favorite podcast app. Support for Tacos of Texas comes from Covert Buick GMC.
Yesterday was a day to stay indoors. Today, however, is one you're going to want to get outside and enjoy. Temperatures will climb into the low to mid 60s with clearing skies. Sunshine will prevail towards the afternoon. We get even warmer, believe it or not, overnight tonight and during the day on Thursday. Temperatures warming into the middle 70s. But that highly advertised Arctic cold front, it gets here pre-dawn Friday, dropping temperatures and giving us a very chilly rain. From the Spectrum News 1 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Ricky Cody for KUT 90.5.
It's 38 in San Marcos.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Culligan Water since 1936, committed to providing cleaner and safer filtered water on demand while working to help reduce the number of plastic bottles going into landfills. Learn more at Culligan.com. From Fidelity Wealth Management, working to help create a comprehensive plan for a client's full financial picture. More at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. And from Viking, dedicated to bringing travelers to the heart of each destination, by river and ocean, offering programs designed for cultural enrichment and immersive experiences on board and on shore. Viking.com.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Rachel Martin.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. Many people have been taking the masks off. Offices are reopening and people are returning there, as well as to gyms and to restaurants. But many remain reluctant to change their COVID routines, even if they are not at high risk. NPR health correspondent Rob Stein listened to some of the wary.
Like everyone else, Devin Golden is thrilled Omicron is in retreat, but he isn't ready to let down his guard. Not even close.
I know a lot of people have stopped wearing their masks. I still wear my mask almost every time in public and especially indoors.
Golden, who's 33 and lives in Palm Bay, Florida, isn't a germaphobe. He doesn't have any health problems that would put him at a high risk. He and his wife are fully vaccinated and boosted, but they just aren't ready to take that leap.
There's still a little bit of a lingering anxiety about being inside around a lot of people whom we don't know without a face covering.
And it's not just masks. He's still glad he can work from home, hasn't gone back to the gym, taken a plane trip, and is still not really socializing much indoors.
There's an element of feeling kind of missing out on stuff, I guess. There's certainly an element of of feeling a little, sad about that. It is what it is, I guess. I've kind of come to accept it in a way.
Because he knows the virus is still out there, infecting more than 40,000 people and killing more than 1,200 every day.
There's been stories about people who were just as healthy as me who have died. Who have died from this. It's rare, but it's not like 0%. So there is that risk.
This can feel like an especially perilous moment for older people with weak immune systems and other health problems that make the virus especially dangerous. Parents of kids too young to get vaccinated are worried too. Many feel left behind and angry. They're relying on other people to help protect them. But Golden is one of the many healthy people who aren't necessarily at high risk or feeling out of sync with the world around them too.
Yeah, it does feel sort of like a weird in-between time.
Michelle Foreman's 42 and lives in Kensington, Maryland with her husband and 2 kids.
It does feel strange. It feels uncomfortable, being in a store and seeing people without masks. It does feel uncomfortable. I do think that in a lot of ways a mask for me and for my husband and my kids feels a little bit like a security blanket. It has been this thing that we have gotten so used to wearing, and it feels normal and it feels reassuring.
So even though they're all fully vaccinated and healthy too, they'll keep masking around other people to protect themselves and others from COVID and long COVID.
I know many people, as we all probably do at this point, who have had COVID, and even seeing what kind of the severe end of mild looks like is definitely not something I want for myself or my family.
So they're still not eating inside restaurants, going to the gym or movies either, still only socializing and doing play dates outside. Same goes for Amy Klager. She's 45 and lives outside St. Paul, Minnesota. And it's not always easy, especially for her 3 kids who are fully vaccinated.
In our neighborhood, we've been the most paranoid. The kids have noted their friends say that your parents are paranoid and crazy, and why are they making you do this? But the girls still wear masks, even though they are getting peer pressure.
Public health experts say it's not surprising different people are reacting very differently at this moment. Monica Shock-Spana is a medical anthropologist at Johns Hopkins.
We're going to have both, for some, a sense of liberation, for others, a really sense of even deeper endangerment, and in the middle, a lot of confusion.
And some people are feeling pressure to do things they may not feel comfortable doing. Eating inside restaurants because friends are tired huddling around propane heaters and fire pits, trudging back to the office before they're ready, feeling like the oddball being the only one still masked up.
You can feel alone, the only one wearing a mask in a room, and also feeling in danger at the same time. And that's a very scary place to be.
Ezekiel Contreras is 24 and lives in San Diego. He's lost touch with friends who've gone back to the gym maskless, and he's worried about showing up for job interviews wearing his mask.
I'm worried that that's going to be a problem, like they're going to want me to take the mask off or something, but I think I would just refuse to take the mask off.
In the end, each individual has to become kind of an amateur epidemiologist, calculating how much risk they're willing to take over and over again every day in each situation.
There's no bright line that separates safe and not safe.
Dr. Robert Wachter at the University of California, San Francisco says it depends on where you live, your age, health, and what for you is worth taking a risk and what isn't.
Got to be sort of forgiving of ourselves and our neighbors. You know, our brains have all been pickled in anxiety for 2 years. You can't snap your fingers and say, you know, don't worry about it at all. In part because it's hard for the brain to make that kind of a pivot, and in part because the risk is not zero, it's just low.
For his part, Wachter is still masking up most of the time, but he's also resumed doing some things he did before the pandemic because he knows COVID isn't going away, and this could be as good as it gets for a very long time.
If you're waiting to, for example, eat indoors until the risk of COVID is zero, you may be waiting forever. And that may be where you live. It may be you're risk averse enough to say,